Welcome to episode 9 of the BA Coaches Show. This is coming out on Sunday, June 16th, 2024. We have, I'd say, a pretty fun show today, if you ask me. After some kind of feedback from some fans and the fact that I've got a lot of new listeners and I'm very happy for that, but a lot of people really don't know me that well. So I might kind of introduce myself a little bit here in a segment today. And then we're going to move on to our next positional group preview, Coach BA breakdown. And today is going to be the defensive line, aka Death Row. Then we're going to have a little Q&A segment, and then we're going to finish with our debate topic of the day. So yeah, that's kind of the plan. Just kind of wanted to throw some things out to you guys. Next week, I'm going to record next week's episode very early in the week. The reason for that being is so when you guys see the episode 10 will be released the day after I'm going to have my first barbecue competition with Coaches BA Barbecue. So I'm not going to have time to record on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. So we're going to record it before then. So I'm going to try not to do very much news stuff just because it might be out of date by then. So we're going to have a podcast next week. It will just be in advance. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I really hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Come on down to lovely Paola, Kansas on July 3rd to enjoy a full evening full of fun at Lake Myola. Free will donations accepted at the gate. Fireworks show begins at dusk. Brought to you by the great Paola Chamber of Commerce. So kind of like I had said, I've noticed since honestly in the last week, I've gained a lot of subscribers. So thank you guys for that. I've got way more views. I've had a lot of more people tuning in. And one of the things I've realized just through social media feedback through Twitter and then some of the Facebook groups I'm in is not very many people know me. And a lot of people are kind of apprehensive, like, who is this guy? What about him? So I'm going to take a little bit of time, honestly, kind of just explain kind of who I am a little bit, and you guys can learn a little bit about me. Um, my name is Ben Audi. I am the BA coach is kind of a name that's kind of stuck on with me. I obviously you've been able to tell I am a diehard Nebraska Cornhusker fan. I currently live like just a little bit south of Kansas City. When I was a kid, I grew like first few years of my life, I was in Nebraska. My dad took a job down here, and I've been here ever since. I coach football. I've started coaching youth football when I was a senior in high school. My football career ended early just due to so many concussions, and I was devastated. And I knew I wasn't done with football. That's just kind of how it was. I wasn't going to be done with football, so I decided to get into coaching when I was 17 years old, and I've been sticking with it ever since. I've coached high schools in some very large school districts in Kansas. If you're listening to this in another state, you might not understand how our classification system worked, but I've coached in 5A football and I've been in 6A football districts as well. Which 6A is our largest classification. Yeah, football is my number one. I mean, I tell my wife, like, football was my first love, and I've kind of explained that on some of the early episodes of this podcast before, but kind of want to throw that out there. The only thing I enjoy more than football is being a dad and just talking Nebraska Cornhusker football. So a little bit more about me is I'm 24 years old, and yes, I'm fairly young. Yes, I know I look much older than that. My life has kind of been I don't want to say accelerated a little bit, but I feel like it kind of has. Um, I've been with my wife now, Hannah. I've been with her since I was 16 years old, and our daughter Charlotte, whose name I got on my arm, she was born when I was 17 years old. Yes, I was a junior in high school when she was born. So my life has changed completely since then, and I try and use some mistakes that have happened in my life and use that in a positive spin. That's a big reason why I coach sports. That's a big reason why I connect well with some of the younger kids. I feel like that I've coached and just kids throughout the schools that I've worked at is that I can honestly look at them and say, yes, I was a dumb 15, 16, 17-year-old kid as well. But with that, as I became, and I love being a father more than anything in my life. I got two sons now as well, Hank and Bo. They have birthdays coming up. They're about to turn 2 and 3. Being a father has changed my life completely, and it has completely honestly like saved my life and saved me mentally. I had to grow up quite a bit at that stage, and that's fine. And like I said, I wouldn't change that for the world. And a big reason why I coach is to be able to build those connections and, you know, help people through some things, because I try to be a living example every single day of, no matter what bad stuff is happening in your life right now, it can get better. And it will get better if you just stick to it. It might suck. You're going to have to do some things, and you might not always love it for a while, but things are going to get better. So that's kind of just a little bit about me and my backstory. Um, right now, if you listen, like I don't know, a few weeks ago, I was most recently coaching at Spring Hill High School, 5A school, not too far from me. I had resigned from there. I'm not going to go into the full story, but I mean, I needed to move on. And so currently I'm a free agent coach. Will I end up coaching this fall? I would really like to. At first I didn't know if I was going to. I still might not, but I would like to. That may end up not happening, and if that is what it is. If I am taking a year off from coaching, I already have my game plan. I can't share what that is yet, but I already have a game plan. I'm going to be heavily involved with the sport of football. Just might have to take a year off at some point here in the next few years. Hopefully it's in a year. It might not be, who knows. I plan on getting back up to the state of Nebraska, just being around my family, being around more Cornhusker fans, right? It's a big thing to me. Nebraska, I've already explained. The state of Nebraska means a lot to me personally, and it reminds me of a time in my life before I had any mental health issues, before I had any bad stuff going on. So I want to get back up to Nebraska at some point. So if I end up having to take a year off, but it ends up meaning I'm able to coach at a school in Nebraska, I'm all for that. And one of my biggest goals in my life is to be, I mean, if you know me, you've known this, I'm going to be a head high school football coach one day. Just plain and simple. That is 100% my goal. Um, I've been the finalist for a couple of jobs. It just never ended up happening, which I understand. I'm young. I don't have the experience, but hey, I'm going to throw my name in the hat, right? But I will. And I really do hope that happens in the state of Nebraska. One of my biggest dreams in my life is being a small town Nebraska high school football coach. And I'm not giving up on that dream, even if I'm taking a year off of coaching right now to get some things in order and do that, it's going to happen. So whether next season, I'm either going to be doing something involving football, high school football in this area, or I'm going to be coaching a small town high school football. As much fun as I've had coaching at the very big schools, small town football is where I'm just going to end up being next year if I'm just staying here. Just the time commitment, and with all the other stuff I have going on in my life mentally, just growing kid, spending more time with my kids. I'm going to coach at a smaller school next year if I coach. But when I get back into coaching, if it's here, it'll be at a small school. If it's up in Nebraska, who knows what happens at that point. But so one of the reasons I made this podcast, I'll kind of throw this out there for you, is I wanted, originally what the BA Coaches Show is it gave me a spot to interview other coaches, high school football coaches. I interviewed a college coach on here. And while I was enjoying that, it didn't really fulfill what I was trying to do with this podcast. Something that I need in my life is just being able to sit down right here and talk sports. And yes, I was doing that, but it wasn't in a way, it was more me ask a question, them give me an answer, and me be like, oh yeah, that was fun, but that's not what I was trying to do. So I was trying to figure out, because I wasn't going to end this podcast. This is like my third attempt at making a podcast. I made a podcast when I was in high school. That was dog shit, but, uh, just, I wasn't going to give up on this, but I was trying to figure out how to rework this. And I realized the one thing that I enjoy more than high school football is Nebraska Cornhusker football. So that's what this podcast is going to be. This podcast, the Facebook account, the Twitter account, is literally just a spot to connect with other Nebraska Cornhusker fans. You guys are all fans just like me, I assume, if you're listening to this. Some people are just listening to this because they like to hear me talk and they like to hear my opinions, and I appreciate you as well. Like I kind of said, I struggle heavily with like mental health issues, like literally since I was a kid. And this gives me a space to be able to talk, get something, not even off my chest, but like forget about. Football's a thing to me that that's why part of why I coach, why I wasn't ready to give up football whenever I was done playing, why I obsess so much over football is it gives me a couple hours, whatever it is, to just not think about any of the bad crap going on, right? I don't have to worry about anything else. And this gives me another outlet to sit down. And yes, I may be angry after they lose a game they shouldn't have or whatever, but I would much rather prefer that than having to live up here, not having a place to talk, if that makes any sense. I need an outlet to be able to let some things out. And this is kind of my thing. So, my biggest thing that I want to do with this podcast is connect with other Cornhusker fans. That is number one. So please help me out with that. Like I said, my views have actually grown quite a bit, and I'm so happy with that. And I'm very thankful for that. Keep liking, sharing, subscribing, all my stuff. It really does help. It makes me feel like, hey, I'm doing something here. I'm a guy that, due to my high school football connections, I have some connections with some guys on staff, whether it's assistant coaches, whether it's guys in the recruiting office, whether it's the football operations guys. I have those numbers saved in my phone. Like some things I'm not obviously going to be able to just hop on a podcast and say, but like I talk to a lot of these guys all the time, and I do have some connections within the program. This fall, I'm going to be visiting practice in August. Last fall, I visited practice in August. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about where we were looking at last year. I was obviously still disappointed, but yeah, that's the thing is I feel like this podcast can provide a unique perspective as I'm a younger fan. I didn't get to live through all of the glory days, right? Like I've said on here before, my biggest memories of Nebraska football, like my first memories, not my biggest, my first is like Nadamakan and Sioux, right? And those were like my glory days. You know what I mean? So I can provide that unique perspective of like, hey, I can't relate to a lot of those big. I obviously know about them. I'm a football fanatic. I go through and I've watched a lot of those like 1995, 97. I even watched some games in the 70s, right? I go through and watch all those. I'm a football nut. I have notes of everything. One of the reasons, again, I started this podcast is I've been making little fake scouting reports for Nebraska's opponents for like the last 5 years by myself. Now this gives me a spot where I can sit down and talk to some of you guys what to expect. I'm a very knowledgeable football guy. I've coached at some of the biggest programs in the state of Kansas, right? So I can provide that unique perspective of, hey, I've faced a defense kind of like this. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's how you attack this defense. Here's where we need to bring pressure. This is a weak link. I know how to watch film. So that's just kind of some things I wanted to throw out there for you. The biggest thing with this podcast is it gives me a spot to connect with fans, and I'm very thankful for that. Because at the end of the day, I'm a fan. I'm a diehard Nebraska Cornhusker fan. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to take some time today and kind of explain that, and hopefully you guys don't mind the rambling too much. But I just kind of wanted to share some things 'cause I know I got a lot of new listeners. So something that we started last Sunday was we're going to start going through every position group on Nebraska's football roster going into 2024. We're going to give a little preview, kind of some things I like, some things to expect, and go kind of a little bit on some players. Today's group is going to be Death Row, aka the 2024 defensive line. So we're going to go through this. Yeah, this is a group I feel very, very, very good with. And you're going to have to excuse me. I do have a lot of notes, so I am going to kind of look down. I try to look here, but like I don't have everything memorized. Forgive me. This is a group I feel very good about. Led by our great defensive line coach, Terrence Knighton, aka he calls himself the CEO of Death Row. Honestly, Coach Knighton is one of my favorite coaches on staff, just the energy he brings all the time. The moniker CEO of Death Row is just freaking sick, right? And just how hard he works recruiting, the development of players that we saw under him through year one. This defensive line unit is going to be one of the strongest in the entire country, not just the Big Ten. I think this is going to be, again, ranked very high nationally. This year's defense, especially defensive line, is anchored by a lot of returning starters, and a lot of guys just maybe they didn't start, but like they got a lot of key snaps in 2023. The 2023 defensive unit was one of the best front sevens in the entire country, and we bring back so much talent. There's no reason why we're not going to be this year. There's no reason why. And overall, the defense was really good, but all of that starts up front with our big boys, and that's what we're going to go over today. That's why I'm starting with defensive line. Again, like I said, Coach Knighton is one of my favorite coaches on staff. He's won me over completely, pretty much since day one. The first time I met him, had a conversation with him, I really liked him. Then just started watching some of his stuff, and I was like, wow, this guy does. Crazy to think how much our overall defense haven't has improved, but especially up front. Going into year one, a lot of the talking heads in Nebraska Nation kind of said like one of the weaker points of the defense may end up being our defensive line. And boy, were we wrong. That's probably the best part of our defense, right? And I say Coach Knighton deserves a lot of credit for that. In the 3-3 stack scheme Nebraska has transitioned to under Tony White, having a lot of strong but versatile linemen is key to this. One of the sayings, I personally coached in a 3-3 defense, and one of the sayings that goes on with 3-3 stack is you never get the same front twice, right? That just goes to show how many different ways you can bring pressure, and understanding angles is so important. As a coach who has also been an offensive coach and coached against the 3-3 stack, if you don't identify and communicate effectively, the offense is in for a long, long day. Even man, you're just going to be confused and helpless out there. And I'm telling you, as a coach who's dealt with this, you got to be able to do that. And with the amount of ways that we can bring pressure under this defense and the athletes that we have, is I expect a big thing. The best news that with this group is we bring back so much talent, and honestly, I don't see any real weaknesses with this group personally, at least on paper. On paper, there's no real weaknesses. In my opinion, this defensive line unit is our best unit overall on the whole team going into the fall. I don't think that's a hot take, but you never know with you guys. That last year we were already a number one or a top 10 defensive rushing team in the country. Bringing back pretty much all our key players is so important in today's world of college football with the transfer portal, NIL, just craziness of the world. Bringing back so many key guys is so important. That's something I'm really happy with. Some of our potential, I'm not saying there will be, but potential depth issues in the secondary, I expect this defensive line and on linebackers right back in this in the 3-3 stack, but focusing on I expect a lot of more pressure this year. They were pretty good on it last year. I'm not saying that, but like I expect a lot of pressure just to limit coverage breakdowns in the secondary. I mean, that's football 101. I know not all you guys are coaches, but I'll explain it. Like if you have some limitations in your secondary, the easiest way to try and go around it is to just bring pressure and don't let those guys get beat. Make a quarterback make a rush decision. And yeah, the good thing about this defense is I can't even say the good thing. There's pros and cons to everything, but something with our defense, as I go through my projected starters, is especially on our defense, the whole starter and backup titles don't mean as much as it would at other countries, other teams in the country, minus the potential black shirts, probably. There's a lot of rotation with this group, especially the D line. There's a lot of rotation, and I'm totally good with that because with the fresh bodies that we bring in the 3-3 stack, again, as the fatigued O lines have to go through with our 3-3 stack, with all the different angles and ways we're bringing pressure, they have to start thinking. And then when they have to start thinking, football, especially with the O linemen, if you've understood it, you've played, you'll understand enough that like you don't want to make those big guys think very much at all. You don't want them thinking, you just want them going out and doing. And when they have to start thinking, and we're also bringing in fresh bodies, and not just fresh bodies, fresh able bodies, like good bodies to bring in, that's going to be a problem. I expect Hutmacher and Robinson to be all Big Ten guys, but I will say, with as much as we rotate, their statistics they're not all the way up there just because we rotate guys so much, just because that's our scheme. So might not see any big stats from one particular player, but I still expect those guys. Like I said, other than the black shirt that you can potentially get with it, there's no real. If you're second guy in the rotation at a position, you're still getting a lot of playing time in our scheme. Ty Robinson is a lock for defensive end starter. He's going to be potential NFL guy, and I say he's a favorite to make the All Big Ten team. He's already a star in Lincoln, and I expect huge things from him this season, especially in key moments, especially, big third down. I expect him to make big plays this year. Nash Polar Bear Hutmacher is the key to this defense, in my opinion. Having a beast as the anchor of your defense is such a big key, and having 8 TFLs last season is amazing. Hutmacher is another guy that I'm expected and excited to see on Sundays as I continue to grow older. at last DN spot is, I think, up for grabs in terms of who's starting. In my opinion, it comes down to Jamari Butler and Cam Lenhart. Lenhart was a beast as a true, or might not be a true freshman. Don't hold me. He was a freshman last season. Until the injury that came through, and then Butler came in and ended up being a beast. He ended up leading the team in tackles for loss, which is a really big deal, especially when he came in after the injury. Both are capable, and both will get a ton of snaps. Like I said, they're both going to play a tremendous amount. Right now, I'm leaning towards Butler getting the starting role just because he is a little bit older, and I mean, he finished the year so strong last season. But I also expect Elijah Judy to be a dark horse to be making plays in the fall. I'm not sure if this is a Terrence Knighton decision or a Tony White decision, but he plays in such a variety of spots on our defensive line. And I think it's particularly when they find a matchup on the O-line that they think he can take advantage of. So he's a very versatile guy in the 3-3 scheme, especially on third down, is perfect for our defense. Riley Van Poppel is another guy to watch. He played in 11 games last season, and I think he'll especially be big. I think they'll use him again in a similar role in short yardage and goal line situation when we call in the big boys. So those are kind of the things I expect from our defensive line this season. I expect a lot of big things from the death row unit this season. With so much great production coming back and experience, I think this will be a really good unit. Let me know, what do you guys think of this unit this year? To me, I think, wow, how great is it to feel good? I feel good about our offensive line, and I feel great about our defensive line. How good of a feeling is that after what we've been through the last 5, 6, 7, I don't even know how many years? How great of a feeling is that? So I feel good about this group, but I would love to hear what you guys think. Our next segment of the day is going to be our Q&A section. I've been getting some good questions. I have a few of them today, and I'm going to try and go through these and answer them as best as I can. Send them in, whether email them to me, send them on Twitter, Facebook. I'll always put out some posts, try and get some questions, and I think I've answered every single one I've gotten. So, okay, this comes from a Husker group I was in. I had someone message me privately and say, explain my recruiting hot take because they didn't understand it. If you're not in this group, you wouldn't understand it. So I'm going to go through it. Okay. Here's my recruiting hot take. Okay. I don't really care that much about summer recruiting, especially like the 2026s that are getting the offers right now. And I honestly I care a little more. I don't care too much about the 25s. And here's why. In today's day and age, NIL, just the way the culture is right now, these commitments mean nothing until it's signed. That's just me. Especially the 26s. They got until this thing is signed at December early signing day. I don't really care. When we lose out on a kid, doesn't really bother me too much. When we get a kid, I don't get that excited. I know we have a pretty good track record of keeping kids once they say they're going to be here, but the overall college football landscape says that this eventually we're going to start getting some of these flips. And I'll say, like, prime example, Dylan Raiola, right? If he stuck to his commitment, he wouldn't be in Lincoln right now. And again, I am one of the biggest Dylan Raiola fans you're going to find in Husker Nation right now. I'm just saying that's why I don't get too excited or too deflated in June about commitments or non-commitments here. That's just kind of my hot take. I know a lot of fans get super deeply invested in it, and that's why I'm going to continue to talk about recruiting news on this podcast. But I'm saying, me personally, I really don't get too deep into it until things get signed, because it doesn't really mean much to me. Again, I'll still talk about the recruiting news because I understand how much of a big deal it is to a lot of you guys. I'm just saying, for me, I'll say I've not the Power 5 level, but I've coached kids that ended up going to smaller colleges that flipped their commitment 3 or 4 times. Like, it doesn't matter. You know what I'm like? Until that thing's signed, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, I've literally had kids that flipped a couple times. So, with coaching changes, I'm actually going to be able to do a little bit better than what I previously thought. Like, it just happens. Next question here is, would a 6-win season be a huge step forward for Rhule? This is from the my friends at Husker Army podcast. They said this will probably show the generational gap. And yes, this probably will. I won't say this won't maybe be a huge step forward for Matt Rhule, but it is a step forward. And it's not even necessarily going from 5 wins to 6 wins. I just being in a freaking bowl game. We need a bowl game. We got to everyone makes a bowl game but us. Everyone. So we definitely need to be making a bowl game. That's just something that we can't. We got to do it. This has got to be the year. This would be a huge, again, not huge. This would be a step forward for us. I will say that. This will be a step forward. Yeah, I'm excited for this year, and I have another question about a bowl game here in a bit, so we'll get into that. Thoughts on Malcolm Simpson? Like I said, kind of, I don't get too deep into the recruiting stuff. I obviously pay attention to it, but I really hope he commits. I think the red on red looks really good on him. As of this moment, he was been in Lincoln, but he has not committed yet. By the time you guys see this, maybe there's news. I just, as I'm sitting down recording this, I don't have that yet. We could really use him, and I'd be really excited to get him. Okay, next question I have. What happens if Dylan Raiola goes down? Do we give up on the season? No. F off for even throwing that into the existence. But no, we have way too much talent to give up on the season. Even if it happens early or late, whatever, we have too much talent to give up on the season. Obviously, that'd be a big blow at quarterback, and I hate that you even threw this out there, but I'm going to answer it anyway. We got way too much talent all around. We just need a quarterback that can go in there and not turn the ball over, and we're going bowling, in my humble but strong opinion. Our last question I have here is, are you serious about the tattoo? Okay, for those of you that don't know, I have publicly said when Nebraska makes a bowl game this year, I will go up to Lincoln, find whatever Lincoln tattoo parlor that you guys recommend to me, and I will get the Nebraska N with the state of Nebraska right on my bicep. Am I serious about that? The short answer, yes. Okay, yes, I'm serious about that. I understand there's a lot of fans that say my expectations are too low. Okay. I've always wanted this tattoo, and I have to say, since I've been old enough to have a tattoo, they haven't made a bowl game. I have been waiting for a reason. I wasn't just going to get it tattooed on me. I was going to be like, oh, we're going to do this in celebration. They haven't given it to me yet. So that's why I think this is dumb. I am serious about this. Here's the other thing. I do need to get my other kids' names tattooed on me. I have one tattoo. It's my daughter's name, and I have 3 kids. So I got to get my other kids' names tattooed on me. I don't know where at, but they'll be on me sometime this summer. So that way, here in December, I can go get a Nebraska Cornhusker, Nebraska N, the state. It'll be like the state outline right on my bicep. Otherwise, my wife will be very upset with me. But yeah, that is going to wrap up our Q&A segment of the day. Like I said, I will answer any questions you guys send to me. You guys just got to send them. So our last segment of the day is going to be our debate topic of the day. This is 100,000% a generational thing. I had some pushback on that, but I stand by this and I'll go through. You're going to have a different answer depending on how old you are. And I'll explain my answer. Who's Nebraska's biggest rival? Okay. If you ask like my grandfather, he'd say Oklahoma. If you ask like my dad, I've had a conversation with my dad about this. He said Oklahoma or probably Colorado. I, at 24 years old, say Iowa. Here's why I say Iowa, and why I think a lot of people my age and younger would say Iowa. I personally was 11 years old when Nebraska joined the Big Ten and stopped playing Colorado and Oklahoma on a regular basis. The Twitter poll that I put out, that I'll say generally, I think I have a younger following on a lot of there, was like 60%, 60% Iowa on that. The Facebook group I put it in, which was pretty much all old people, was like 66% Oklahoma, and they thought I was crazy for saying Iowa. So that's just one of those things that's very generational. If you grew up watching the great games with Oklahoma live throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you're probably very hard on Oklahoma. If some of your first core memories of football are the 90s and 2000s of Nebraska and Colorado both being pretty good and having good games, then that's probably how you view that rival. I say that's probably one of the most heated ones. And I was alive and watching football for a lot of those, but you have to understand, I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. So like to me, I'm just rooting for Nebraska. I hated everybody equally, if that made sense. I don't care. They could be playing Tennessee State or Colorado. To me, it's all the same. I was just rooting for Nebraska to win. But as I started to get older and start my core memories of football, who I always wanted to beat was Iowa. I was at the first Heroes game when Nebraska joined the Big Ten. I was there in Lincoln. So that was really cool. And that's just kind of something that stuck with me. So I'd say that is 100% a generational thing. And that's kind of why I say people my age kind of view Iowa as that fan, because I think it's hard for me to picture Oklahoma or Colorado as that big rival. Again, I understand if you do. I'm just saying from my perspective as a younger fan is when I started really getting, we don't play them every year. We play them once or twice every, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years. So it's hard for me. I don't remember all of those really good games. So it's hard for me to, I understand they're a rival and I really want to beat them. I want to beat them more than I want to beat the average team. But to me, my team that I very much despise and hate everything about is Iowa. That's just me. A lot of my friends have said that I am just as big of an Iowa hater as I am a Nebraska fan, and I stand by that. So, yeah, that's kind of just my thoughts, and you guys let me know what you guys kind of thought on the debate topic of the day. I have some good ones coming up. I just have to plan on which ones they are. So that is going to wrap up today's episode of the BA Coaches Show. I would just like to say, if you're still listening this far, like I said, I always throw these in at the end. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all the love and support I've been getting. Hopefully you guys liked today's episode. I'm going to try not to go on about myself too much, but I wanted to throw this out there, and I also have a clip to throw on my channel kind of explaining some more about me. I'm trying out a new thing. I'm going to have a little thing like right in the middle of the screen. I don't know if that's going to stay. So yeah, like I said, I got to get through this barbecue competition first, and then studio's gonna be done hopefully in August, and gonna have some guests soon. I haven't decided whether the first guest is gonna be when I'm out in the new studio or it's got to be before. Ignore that comment. We're gonna have guests on before that. So expect me. I'm gonna be a guest on other podcasts. I'm working on that right now, so expect me. And hey, just know we are in full-fledged football mode. I am solely focused on football right now. I got some good things cooking. Be on the lookout for me. If you like a lot of my Husker talk and opinions, I got something coming. I'm not going to say what it is yet, but just know I got something really good coming. So thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, GBR and in rule we trust.